Right now, Congress is currently working on a so-called relief deal for coronavirus. Now, the details of what is actually in this deal are depressing, to say the least. Nonetheless, they keep saying, we're close to a deal, we're close to a deal. Now, this deal, of course, makes no one happy. I've talked about, of course, what either side is demanding. You've got Republicans that are pushing for, reduced unemployment benefits, asking for, the elimination of stimulus checks. They're asking for corporate liability. And of course, the Democrats are pushing for state aid, aid for local, cities and states and things like that. And so nobody's asked what the American people want. Well, I mean, somebody just did ask that, actually. That's a poll. But nobody in Capitol Hill seems to quite, give a shit. But I'm going to talk about that anyway, because there is a poll that talks about this. Now, according to the latest Yahoo Finance Harris poll, it was about 2,000 people. The majority of Americans actually reject the Republican demand for corporate liability and agree with $1,200 stimulus checks. So now, 2 in 3 Americans actually said that stimulus checks were the most important provision of the next relief deal, while fewer than 1 in 4 support the liability protection for corporations, and only 1 in 5 actually back student loan payment deferral. So we'll get to the student loan stuff later. However, this is interesting, right? People need money, and so people are in favor of stimulus. And they look at the coronavirus liability protection for corporations, and they're like, why? Why is that a priority for you when we are struggling? We need money right now. And look, they need money because they're 6 to 8 months behind in rent. People are going to food banks just to get by. And just recently, over 100,000 Americans just filed for unemployment. It is really bad out there. It's awful out there. And so people are hurt, they're frustrated, and they're wondering why the fuck Republicans are pushing for corporate liability. Well, I've explained that quite a bit. But look, to them, it's like, well, look, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to pay our rent. It's not going to put food on our table. So why? Well, it's because corporations want it. And corporations right now want to save money, as always, right? That's what they do. And so what this will do is allow these companies to get away with not protecting their workers by stopping people from being able to do lawsuits against them. In fact, that's already happening, that these companies are not protecting their workers. And so you've got lawsuits right now that are winding their way through the courts. And so one of the biggest provisions of the Republican stimulus proposals was to put like this retroactive corporate liability provision in the bill. So that would stop those lawsuits from actually going through those courts. And so now, as far as employers not protecting their employees, they did a survey about that as well. This is a different one. According to a survey of 11,651 service sector workers conducted between the months of September and November at 71 different companies. So these are places like Walmart, Kroger. There's fast food and restaurant outlets like Chipotle, Waffle House, Dunkin's, Wendy's, all that stuff, right? So now 41% of workers said that they could only sometimes, rarely, or never socially distance at work. 28% of workers said that customers only sometimes, rarely, or never wore masks. In the food industry, more than 40% of workers said that customers were not wearing masks. That's important because, again, if the company does not enforce masks on their properties, protect their staff in the pursuit, if they decide like, we would rather have more customers that come in, the anti-maskers, we don't care if they wear masks or not, as long as they're spending money. Well, you're not protecting your staff, right? Those workers will get sick as a result. That's why they want the liability shield, so they can say, well, hey, we would like you to wear a mask, but we're not going to enforce it. And so you can still come into our restaurant, you can still spend your money. We still get money, And if we get sued by one of our employees that we put in needless risk for our gain, for our benefit, our profit, well, we don't have to pay that lawsuit. We're protected. And that's what it is, really. So now, at Walmart, 47% of workers said they can only sometimes keep 6 feet away from others, and 26% said customers only sometimes or rarely mask up. Now, this is a personal anecdote. I go to the store just like anybody else. I know I shop for my own groceries. Ooh, yeah. I don't know. It just makes me think of all the politicians that don't actually go and buy their own groceries. Like they don't know how much things cost in the grocery store. It's amazing, these people. But when I go to the store, I wear my mask. I get some hand sanitizer with me. You know, I'm all good, right? I keep my distance. That's fine. Now, sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of you have also experienced this, you're wearing the masks, but you get a couple of people who don't. That sucks, right? That sucks. Now, you have store employees that decide, well, we're not going to enforce that. And I don't really blame them, right? And it's because you have employees that when they do try to enforce it, are bullied, harassed, sometimes even assaulted by people who are anti-maskers, okay? And so they decide, I don't get paid enough for this. I don't get paid enough to go and enforce the mask mandates, to try and some might not even agree with them. But, you know, they're not paid enough to try to deal with that bullshit, okay? And so that's a problem. But now Republicans in Congress have now eliminated those people's only recourse by, you know, trying to put in these provisions that most people don't even think should be part of a stimulus deal. And yet, as I've reported before, you have Mitch McConnell, who has said that this is a top priority for Republicans. Because, of course, in reality, survival checks are the most important provision for Americans. They call them stimulus. In reality, they're survival. And they're really wondering why Congress hasn't gotten on this. I mean, nearly 7 in 10 Americans, according to the survey, expected and budgeted in the hopes that Congress would have passed a stimulus bill a long time ago. In fact, they thought it was something that was going to get passed all the way back in August. And obviously, it didn't. It didn't. What a complete failure of government that all we got was one $1,200 stimulus check to last for 9 months, roughly. The result of that, of course, you know, it's an absolute disaster. More than half of all respondents, 53%, say that they'll need more than 7 months for their household finances to return to pre-pandemic levels, with 1 in 3 saying it may take more than a year. That is not only terrible for them, right, but also for the economy at large. We have an economy that is based 100% on consumer spending, okay? And so if you're not spending, you're not keeping people in their jobs. And then, of course, they lose their jobs, they stop spending, you get unemployment that stays high, and then it turns out to be a complete and utter disaster. In fact, more than a third of Americans, 33.9%, reported that they have had a somewhat to very difficult time paying basic household expenses in the first week of November, according to a report by the Census Bureau. So that is, and again, absolute economic disaster. What is the Republican plan? Why? Because, well, politically, it's good for Republicans if there's no recovery. Why? Well, they're going to blame Democrats. And they're going to use this to get back into power. Oh, look at what the Democrats did. It obviously wasn't enough. Democrats had control of the government, and they didn't do anything to help you. And in fact, Donald Trump, right now, himself, has been calling for $2,000 stimulus checks to be mailed out. How is it that Donald Trump, and I know he wants to use this to try to stay into power. I know that. So it's okay, don't at me. But he's been saying we should go big on the checks. His staff literally had to say, no, don't do that. You're going to blow up the negotiations. Because right now, the negotiations are a $600 check. In fact, we can't even get $1,200 checks anymore. Ron Johnson just blew up the negotiations on that. Where you had Senator Josh Hawley getting together with Senator Bernie Sanders to push $1,200 stimulus checks. But Ron Johnson said, nope, we have concerns about the deficit. Ron Johnson, by the way, had no concerns about the deficit when he pushed for Donald Trump's budget-breaking tax cuts for the wealthy. Wonder why. Yeah. So, I know. And so, look, that's the thing, okay? It's all political. They want a bad economy so they can blame the Democrats, use it to get back into power, and then, of course, cut taxes for the rich again, because that's what they do. Now, the thing is that requires people to not pay attention, which is really kind of tough right now because most people are paying attention because they're out of work and they're hurting, which is why McConnell has budged just a tiny bit. And now he says, let's get a $600 stimulus check per person. Oh, wow. So generous. So generous. Look, the $1,200 wasn't enough. And now they've cut it in half. And that is their compromise. $1,200 was the compromise. $600 it's a slap in the face. It's an insult. Insult. And by the way, they're saying that if you don't, if you get unemployment, which is slashed to about $300, well, then you don't get a stimulus. And of course, the reason that McConnell budged on this was entirely political, which of course maybe opens up an avenue for $1,200. Although, again, we got people like Ron Johnson that think, nope, $600 too much. All right. In fact, the New York Times explains why McConnell changed position. In a call on Wednesday afternoon, McConnell said that Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, who are both facing January runoffs that will determine which party controls the Senate, were getting hammered for Congress's failure to deliver more pandemic aid to struggling Americans, particularly the direct payments, and that enacting the measure could help them. Democrats, why are you not going out on the airwaves and hammering them on this? Again, the survival checks, as I just gave you in the polling, extremely popular. Okay? Again, Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley, bipartisanship, news media, corporate media, you love bipartisanship, right? There's a good example of it right there. Okay? That's a good example. Why are they not utilizing Bernie? You should. You should. And again, you get to say bipartisanship. Look at Josh Hawley. He's a Republican, and he's in favor of $1,200 checks, survival checks. Can't even do that. It's a political winner, and yet Democrats are choosing to lose once again because that $600 check is not going to go far enough. And when the economy continues to tank, well, Republicans are going to say, look at what Democrats did. They didn't open up the economy like what we said. We told you that giving money to poor people wasn't going to work. And guess what? Didn't work. That's what it is. Democrats, you have leverage. Use it. When Donald Trump is to the left of you on an issue, not a good look. You should come back and say, no, we can do better. We can do a $2,000 a month UBI. Better than Donald Trump. Wouldn't you be in favor of it? Most Americans apparently are. Do it. Be strong. The American people are counting on you. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.